So we're back again with an update here. This whole series is not meant to be a highlight reel. It's not meant to be overly edited or scripted or something like that. But it's really just to give you guys insight into this journey for me. Like I already mentioned in the first video, this whole period of time for me is, physical, mental, even spiritual reset. The later part of 2023 post show and even the initial months of 2024 have not been the greatest for me. I came from this period early in 2023 and even in 2022 where, all throughout that period of time, especially when I was prepping, I was in such a good place mentally, and I was just in a good place in my life. And then after the prep, there was a lot of moving parts, and I ended up just falling back into some bad habits. I stopped staying consistent with certain habits that were really beneficial for me. You can look at my Instagram, and a lot of times you probably see just the highlights, and a lot of times you don't see the reality. And the reality is that, man, for me, I'm not perfect and I still struggle with certain things. And this series is really just for me to take you guys along the journey and be more real. It's not meant to be overly edited or scripted. You can go to somebody else's channel. Those are the type of videos you want to see. But this is just to take you guys into the life of a legit natural bodybuilder. So the fact of the matter was, I've been cutting now, and Sunday I ended up going off plan. I ended up eating a lot more than planned, a lot more than I'm supposed to right now, well over my calorie target. And I ended up having almost like a binge eating episode, and basically it was a binge eating episode. I had a binge eating episode, and for years, going way back into 2020, I actually struggled with binge eating a lot. And that was actually a reason why I thought I would not be able to continue the bodybuild. And it wasn't until I started addressing the issue that I got finally into a position, I put myself into a position where I could go through a contest prep again and, not have those issues. However, I ended up basically having a similar situation here, and it's really weird because this is certainly not a normal thing that would happen when you're just doing a normal cut. So that's one thing to also keep in mind. It's like typically unless you're like dieting for like a show where you're getting extremely lean, you really shouldn't have a binge eating episode like this. And so the question is like, why did that happen to me, even though I'm not prepping for a show and I'm not super lean? Well, one thing to keep in mind is, when you do get contest lean and you get like really shredded, the recovery process takes a very long time. And a reality is that even up until this point, my show was in July. I ended up stopping my prep in August. So it was sometime in mid-August when I stopped prepping. And now, where are we? We're in April, and I'm still not fully recovered in a lot of ways. My metabolism is still not where it normally would be at this body weight or this body fat. Normally for me, cutting from 200 pounds to like 180 would actually be very easy and almost effortless. And typically that means that like when I'm 200, at that starting point of the cut, typically my hunger would be very, very low, and I would be on very, very high calories. And so having to drop down would be very easy because it's essentially what my body would want to be doing. However, in this case, even at that starting point, I wasn't even eating as many calories as I normally would at 200 pounds. For me to maintain that 200 pounds, I actually didn't have to eat as much. Hunger levels were a bit higher than I normally would be, And so certainly that's played a role to where now as I'm cutting, I'm experiencing a lot more of those effects of dieting than I typically would. And so it was just a similar situation that I've had before when I was prepping, where, yeah, I had this, the hunger was just extremely high, and, I had something off plan, and yeah, that ended up happening. And so my weight came up to like 196. Well, actually, what happened was the day after, what I did was I just didn't even weigh in. I didn't even weigh in the day after I knew my weight would be up. I just got back on plan. And so then the following days when I weighed in again, my weight was up a bit. And then I just got back on track, So that's essentially what I did. I just had that day after where I just didn't even want to weigh in because of the psychological impact that would have. And then I just waited the next day. But yeah, after that happened Sunday, I just got back on track. That's essentially what happened. And so, yeah, I just wanted to take you guys into that, because for me, like, mentally when that happened, I felt like, man, I can't believe this is happening right now. I can't believe I had something like this happen to me. But the reality is that, I had some years where that was a serious issue. And so, it just ended up happening again. But I wanted to, take you guys along that and just show you guys that, I make mistakes and I'm not perfect. And so, yeah, that happened. But what did I do? I simply got back on track, those following days, and just carried on. And also another big thing is I let my coach know. So, I had my check-in with my coach this past weekend. Actually, it was, Friday when I checked in with him. So I just let him know what happened. I let him know, and I was honest about it. And that's another big thing, is just that honesty. I think a lot of times we think that when we're dieting and we have this plan in place, especially if we work with somebody, that we have to be 100% perfect. Or if we do mess up, we feel like we can't tell them. And that's a major issue, is feeling like you can't let that person know that you did make a mistake. And so one of the best things you can do is just be upfront and honest. Like, if you had a week where everything didn't go exactly as planned, just be upfront about it. Have that communication at the forefront, that open communication at the forefront, and then from there, adjustments can be made. So that's something that's very important. And so that happened. So this past week wasn't quite what I was wanting it to be, but at the end of the day, I didn't lose all this progress. It was more so that I was just a little bit more full in this past week's check-in pictures. Had a little more fullness. My body weight was up a little bit, but it wasn't like all this progress was necessarily lost. A lot of that's just in your head. When you start to think that, oh man, I had this day where I ate more and it's like the end of the world now. It's really not. It's not the end of the world. And so the fact of the matter is, you learn from those moments. You learn, and also think about, what did I do that caused this to happen? And how do I prevent that from happening next time? But, the one thing you don't want to do is just to feel so guilty that you feel like you can't communicate what happened and let somebody know. So, yeah, I just wanted to share that with you guys. And so that's basically where I'm at. My weight came up a little bit. And now, it's like I've seen 194s, 195s these past few days. It had gone up to 196 actually from 193. But yeah, we're back on track. So we're just going to keep moving along. But another thing I'm realizing too, as I go on this journey, is that I don't have to be perfect, and I don't have to be so focused on what these other people are doing. This is a journey of me becoming the best version of myself. And so I think that's something all you guys can take from this, is that, it's easy to get caught up in what other people are doing and to start to compare ourselves to other people. And sometimes social media only shows the highlights, and we think that, man, we have to be perfect, or there's just something severely wrong with me if I do make a mistake. But I'm realizing as I go on this journey that it's okay if I make mistakes, You know, it's more about learning from those moments, and you know, you just gain more experience in time. Like I can think about when I first started lifting and first got more into bodybuilding, and some of the mistakes I was making with training and with my food, with eating. You know, like my first prep I did in 2018, the way I was eating on that prep was definitely not good, and it was not ideal at all for, you know, having a successful prep. So like the transformation I had from then to this past prep was just completely different, and my habits in the off season have been a lot different overall than when I first started bodybuilding, you know, and the way I would go about an off season. So there's been so much growth there. Yeah, I'm never going to be perfect. I'm always going to make some mistakes at some point, but as long as I'm continuing to progress and improve, then that's what this is really about. Guess what? We're back on track and we're going to keep moving forward. I just wanted to share that with you guys. This is another episode of The Reset here, and this is just the reality. This is the transparency here, and I hope some of you guys could take something from this video.